Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Crime and Punishment recap series. We're continuing with the early modern period. However, after doing the overview and looking at the changing nature of crime, we're now moving on to how law and order changed in this period. Now, the key themes that you need to engage with throughout the crime and punishment topic are change and continuity. So what I've done for this slide is I've broken down what stays the same and what changes in law enforcement, just to try and make that a little bit clearer. So in terms of continuity then, from the medieval period through to the early modern period, there is still no professional police force. So responsibility for upholding the law is on individuals. And a good example of this is the hue and cry. The king and the government rely on individual people upholding the law for them and showing them loyalty. So this is a continuity from the medieval period. Another example of continuity in law and order is the fact that law enforcement officials are unpaid, so they do it voluntary, and they are amateur officials. They don't have any professional training. And examples of these include the Justices of Peace, the JPs, and the Constables. So, of course, this obviously brings its own challenges in terms of their skills and their ability to uphold the law effectively. There are some changes. An example of these is the fact that even though the Justices of Peace do exist in medieval England, so the JPs come into being in the 1300s, but they do exhibit some kind of change during this time because their power grows significantly in early modern Britain. For example, they increasingly have more power in the Court of Sessions. So at the start of the medieval period, it's run by the sheriffs. However, by the end of the medieval period and increasingly throughout the early modern period, the JPs run the Court of Sessions, while the power of the sheriff declines. JPs also get additional powers, such as being able to grant licenses to alehouses, so that's pubs. They can arrest vagabonds, so those are vagrants, and they can also fix roads. Another example of change is the fact that watchmen are employed for the first time. Because towns and cities are growing during the early modern period, and as urbanisation starts to take hold, local sort of areas realise that they need some sort of law enforcement to patrol the streets at night, and they employ watchmen to arrest vagabonds and drunks wandering the streets at night. However, the watchmen are quite an inefficient way of upholding the law because, again, they don't have any training, so they're not very skilled at their job, and they would often fall asleep or on their job or get drunk at night because they have a day job as well. So that means they're not that effective. But it is an example of change in law enforcement. Another example of change is the fact that from 1660, local manor courts and church courts decline. So manor courts and church courts had been in operation since the medieval period, the manor courts for village disputes and church courts for moral crimes, but they're increasingly replaced with justices of peace at what are known as petty sessions, because these petty sessions take over as well from the court of sessions because there are simply that many crimes that the justices of peace need to deal with. And finally, the last example of change in the way that law and order is enforced is to do with additional changes to the courts. So you have assizes, which are a type of court. Assizes do exist in medieval Britain, but they increasingly replace royal courts for the most serious cases. The assize works by dividing each county into 5 areas, and then 2 judges would listen in circuits to the crimes that had happened in that particular area. You also get the fact that, as I've mentioned before, petty sessions increasingly replace manor courts, but there is some continuity as well because church courts, even though they do decline during this period, they still do continue to punish moral crimes such as Puritanism. So the idea of change and continuity is a little bit it blurs the lines sometimes between it. You can have examples of change and continuity for the same thing. For example, the church court continues from medieval Britain, and it continues to punish moral crimes, especially with the rise of Puritanism in early modern Britain. But by the end of this period, it's increasingly replaced with things like petty sessions. So that wraps up episode 7 for Law and Order. The next one will be on punishments in early modern Britain. So please make sure you continue to have a look at that.